So we have to talk about the next Star Wars movie that's coming out, The Mandalorian and Grogu. Question for you guys. How excited are you for The Mandalorian and Grogu? What's your hype level for the movie out of 10? Okay. Now, a couple of different things just recently came out with regards to The Mandalorian and Grogu. And unfortunately, I think these updates are not going to inspire a lot of confidence. They're not necessarily bad news. I think they make sense, but I think given context around what's happening to this movie and a lot of other stuff that we've heard, it doesn't necessarily inspire much confidence. Let's talk about the production, and I'm over on Bespin Bulletin, okay? This was his exclusive. Says here, according to my sources, filming on The Mandalorian and Grogu will run from June until October, making it a 4-month-long shoot. For comparison, the last season of The Mandalorian, season 3, filmed from late September 2021 until March 2022, a 6-month shoot. And that's just for principal photography, and reshoots pickups did happen later on. If all goes according to plan, Lucasfilm will have plenty of time to get The Mandalorian and Grogu ready for a 2026 release. So that's the first bit of news. The second bit of news has to do with the budget. I'm reading again from this article here. It says, one thing Jeff Snyder, the Snyder, has repeatedly mentioned in his podcast, The Hot Mic, is that Disney is looking to spend less on their films. For example, Snyder has shared that Disney didn't want to pay high fees for the Fantastic Four cast, and Blade would be made for under $100 million. This leads me into a minor tidbit I'd heard from a singular source. The budget for The Mandalorian and Grogu isn't as high as what season 3 of The Mandalorian would cost. The first season of The Mandalorian was reported to cost $15 million an episode. This brings the budget to around $120 million for the first season. We don't know if the series became more expensive with each season, but you assume it would have, especially with season 3 in particular. It's also been reported that Skeleton Crew, upcoming live action from John Watts, is the most expensive LA-based Star Wars series at $136 million. So with that in mind, expect the Mandalorian and Grogu movie to have a budget of $120 million or less. Okay, so on the one hand, as Trev is repeating in chat over and over again, you can explain the difference because you've got 8 hours of content versus maybe 2.5 hours at most of content. Okay, but I personally think it's not exactly an inspiring bit of information, okay? So, for instance, most Star Wars movies, the budget of most Star Wars movies, not the OT, but we're talking about the prequels and the sequels, is $200 million. I think even more for some of them. In fact, let's see if we can look that up. What was the budget for these Star Wars movies? But you're talking about big movies, right? That cost a lot of money. Now, Marvel, as he says in the article, and this is something Jeff has talked about, a lot of different people have talked about, Disney is trying to spend less on these shows and on all these movies. I think you can make a Blade movie. You can even make a Midnight Suns movie for $100 million. You know, horror is traditionally pretty cheap to shoot. That's why Hollywood loves it, right? Horror is pretty cheap to shoot. You don't have a lot of high-profile talent in there. I mean, Blade's probably the highest profile. Apparently, they're thinking about getting Michael Giacchino. He does not come with a high price tag. So, that's something. And so, on face value, you could say, well, Mandalorian and Grogu shooting for only 4 months, having the lowest budget of any Star Wars movie in the last 20 years is not necessarily devastatingly bad news. But I think when you add the context of nobody knowing that this movie was happening, Disney pivoting into making the 4th season of The Mandalorian into this film at sort of a dizzying, shocking pace, everybody was surprised. Everybody was taken off guard. And, the comments made by Dave in that one interview we watched a couple of weeks ago doesn't exactly inspire confidence. So I think when you add in the fact that they're basically we need a Mandalorian and Grogu movie, they're kind of audible at the line, oh shit, here we go. And you add in the fact that the movie itself is going to only shoot for 4 months and have arguably a pretty low budget, I mean, it just doesn't inspire a lot of confidence. You know what I mean? It doesn't get me super excited for The Mandalorian and Grogu. I got a lot of questions about what is this movie? Who's in this movie? And how is it possible that this movie is going to be very epic and big in scope? Or maybe it won't be. Like, I'm curious, guys. Do you think that if this movie is basically just an extended episode of The Mandalorian and it doesn't necessarily have anything really crazy going on, it's just Grogu and Mando hanging out, but it's on the silver screen. Like, would you consider that to be okay? Like, would you be all right with that? Or do you think if you are taking a show and putting it into the movie theaters, you've got to kind of amp it up? I mean, I thought one of the benefits of going into the movies was that you could spend more money on it. Like, isn't that the whole idea? Because you have a big long tail cash flow of theatrical releases, which you don't necessarily have on a streaming service, right? As long as we see the sex scene, says Trinity. Oh, hell yeah. No, I've heard the Grogu stuff's really going to pop off. You know what I mean? So I'm sure you're looking forward to that. Now, again, this doesn't mean it's a disaster. But I think just throw another log on the fire of like, I'm fucking concerned, you know, because I am. Like, what is this movie? And what is happening? Like, it feels like they've just kind of scrunched 2 episodes together. And I don't know, man. Like, I don't know. I want to feel like we're being presented some epic Star Wars adventure that is worthy of the silver screen, that is worthy of like a $20 IMAX ticket, that is worthy of all of that. And I don't know, this to me feels a little bit like, what the hell are we doing here? What is this movie? Why are they doing this? And so I wanted to share it with you guys because frankly, it is concerning. It makes me a little bit more concerned about the movie. Like, I can just imagine being like 40 minutes into the movie and thinking to myself, like, yeah, this could have just been on Disney Plus. I don't really understand what the fuck we're doing here. Oh my God. You know what I mean? And that's not gonna be a positive experience. And I don't think that's gonna be positive for the fan base. The whole idea with this movie is programming, meaning they don't want the Rey movie to be the first movie in 7 years. They want something more bankable. They want something with more mass appeal. And so the Mandalorian and Grogu it's a programming move. It's supposed to make you feel good early in the year, and perhaps you feel so good that you're more willing to go watch the Rey movie later that year. That's the whole idea. So just wanted to pass this information along to you, talk about why I'm concerned, and obviously open up the question for you guys. Like, what do you think? What do you think?